Millionaire invites a homeless woman to be his date at his ex's wedding. When she arrives, neither of them could have predicted the emotional roller coaster that follows. On a cold autumn night in New York City, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the distant sound of laughter from nearby streets. Inside a small cafe, the warm glow of lights created a cozy atmosphere, contrasting with the chill outside. Ethan, a successful businessman, sat at a corner table, his mind drifting as he sipped his coffee. He had everything one could want: wealth, a career, status, but tonight, he felt an emptiness creeping in. Then, his eyes fell upon her. Clara sat alone at a table near the window, her clothing tattered and her expression distant. The sight of her pulled at Ethan's heart. There was a sadness in her eyes that mirrored his own insecurities, a silent plea for connection. He couldn't look away. Why did she sit there, so vulnerable and lost? What stories did those tired eyes hide? "Excuse me," he found himself saying, surprising even himself. He stood up and walked toward her, his heart racing. "Hi, I'm Ethan." Clara looked up, taken aback by the sudden attention. "Hello," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She was unsure of his intentions, scanning his face for any sign of mockery. "I couldn't help but notice you sitting here alone," Ethan continued, his tone sincere. "Would you like to join me? I could use some company." His invitation felt impulsive, but there was something about Clara that drew him in. Clara hesitated, a mix of disbelief and confusion flashing across her face. "Me? Why would you want to talk to me?" She glanced at the other patrons, all dressed elegantly, contrasting sharply with her own worn appearance. Ethan shrugged, a small smile breaking through. "Because you look like someone who could use a break. And honestly, I could too." There was a moment of silence, heavy with uncertainty. Clara's heart raced. Did he really mean it? Could this be genuine? A flicker of hope ignited within her, but fear quickly doused it. "You don't know me," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not the kind of person who belongs in a place like this." "Neither am I," Ethan said with a chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. "But here we are, aren't we? How about we make the most of it?" Clara's mind raced. What did this invitation mean? She felt overwhelmed, caught between skepticism and the desire for connection. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice edged with caution. "I want nothing but to share a moment," Ethan replied earnestly. "In fact, I have an idea. I'm going to my ex-girlfriend's wedding tonight. It's a big event, and I'd rather not go alone. Would you come with me?" Clara's eyes widened in shock. "A wedding? You must be joking. I can't just show up at a fancy wedding like that. People will talk." "Let them talk," Ethan said, his tone firm yet kind. "You deserve a night away from whatever it is you are dealing with, and I promise I won't let anyone judge you. Just think about it." Clara looked down, her heart racing. The thought of stepping into a world so far removed from her reality was both terrifying and exhilarating. What would it be like to be seen as more than her struggles, even for one night? "Why me?" she asked, still skeptical. "Because you looked like you needed a friend," Ethan replied, his eyes softening. "And maybe I do too." As Clara weighed his words, she felt a whirlwind of emotions. What if this was her chance to escape the weight of her life, even if just for a few hours? Could she trust him? I don't know," she finally said, biting her lip as her thoughts collided. "Just think about it," Ethan encouraged, a hopeful smile on his face. "You can always say no. But what if you say yes?" The question hung in the air, charged with possibility. Would she take the leap into the unknown, or would she retreat back into the shadows? As Clara looked into Ethan's earnest eyes, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. Clara sat on the edge of her bed, the invitation from Ethan clutched tightly in her hand. The cool autumn breeze drifted through the window, carrying with it the sounds of the bustling city outside. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked tired and worn. "Is this really happening?" she whispered to herself. Doubts swirled in her mind, making it hard to breathe. What if this is just a joke? She thought, biting her lip. The memories of her past haunted her, casting shadows on her hopes. She remembered the looks of pity and judgment she often received. "I don't belong there," she murmured, shaking her head. "I'm just a nobody." Yet, somewhere deep inside her, a flicker of hope began to grow. Ethan had seen her, not the tattered clothes or the dirt on her shoes, but the person she was. "Maybe, just maybe, I can escape this for one night," she said softly, her heart racing at the thought of the wedding. With a deep breath, Clara stood up and walked over to her closet. She opened the door and stared at the few clothes hanging there. "What do I wear to a wedding?" she pondered, feeling a wave of panic wash over her. She picked up a simple dress that she had saved for a special occasion. It was old, but it was the best she had. "This will have to do," she decided, pulling it off the hanger. As she slipped into the dress, Clara felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. "What if I embarrass myself?" she asked aloud. "What if I don't fit in?" She turned to her reflection again, running her fingers through her hair. "I can't let my worries hold me back." Meanwhile, Ethan paced in his apartment, his thoughts racing. The wedding loomed ahead, filled with memories he wished to forget. He had agreed to go with Clara, but now he questioned his decision. "What am I doing?" he muttered to himself. "I can't drag her into my past." He recalled his last encounter with Sarah, the bride, and the way she had smiled at him with a mix of love and disdain. "She'll never let me forget," he groaned, rubbing his temples. But then he thought of Clara, her sad eyes, and the way she had looked at him. "I can't let my fears stop me from helping her," he said, determination creeping into his voice. The hour for the wedding approached, and Clara made the final touches to her appearance. She took one last look in the mirror. "You can do this," she whispered, trying to convince herself. "Just one night." With her heart pounding, she stepped out of her apartment, ready to face the unknown. When she arrived at the venue, Clara was struck by the grandeur. The building was beautifully decorated with flowers and lights, and elegant guests mingled outside. She felt small and out of place among them. "What was I thinking?" she whispered, her confidence wavering. As she entered, she spotted Ethan at the entrance, looking dapper in his suit. He smiled when he saw her, his expression warm and inviting. "You made it," he exclaimed, his eyes lighting up. "You look amazing, Clara." "Thank you," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I just hope I don't stick out too much." She looked around, feeling the weight of the crowd's gaze. Ethan noticed her unease and said, "Just be yourself. Everyone here has their own struggles, even if they don't show it." Clara nodded, grateful for his reassurance. But as they moved deeper into the venue, she felt the stares of the elite press upon her, making her skin crawl. "Ethan, I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they judge me?" He gently took her hand, grounding her. "You're not alone. I'm here with you. Let's just enjoy the night." His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, easing some of her fears. As they mingled, Clara found herself opening up to Ethan, sharing bits of her life over cocktails. "I never thought I'd be here," she admitted, laughing nervously. "This is all so new to me." Ethan smiled, his eyes kind. Life is full of surprises. Sometimes they bring us to unexpected places. Their connection deepened as they shared their stories, each revealing the loneliness that often accompanied their lives. But as the evening wore on, Clara's heart raced with uncertainty. Would she be able to handle the judgment? Would she find her place among the elite? As she pondered these questions, the atmosphere shifted, and she caught sight of Sarah entering the room, her presence sending a jolt of anxiety through Clara. Ethan's smile faded as he noticed Sarah too. He squeezed Clara's hand, silently promising to protect her from whatever was to come. Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the night ahead, unsure of the challenges that awaited her, but determined to face them head-on. As Clara and Ethan arrived at the wedding venue, Clara's heart raced. The grand entrance was adorned with flowers and elegant decorations that sparkled under the soft lights. Guests in designer outfits mingled, their laughter and chatter creating an atmosphere that felt both magical and intimidating. Clara's eyes widened as she took in the scene. This world was so far removed from her own. "Wow," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the music. "It's so beautiful." Ethan glanced over at her, sensing her unease. "It really is," he replied, trying to sound upbeat. "But you belong here as much as anyone else. Just be yourself." Clara forced a smile, but inside, she felt small and out of place. The clinking of glasses and the chatter of well-dressed guests made her acutely aware of her own worn clothes and the struggles she faced every day. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her back. "We can leave anytime you want, but I promise, it'll be okay. Just stick with me." She nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. As they entered the reception hall, the lights sparkled off crystal chandeliers, casting a warm glow over everything. Clara's heart sank a little more as she watched people glide across the floor, their movements graceful and confident. She felt like an outsider, a stranger in a world that was not hers. Ethan led her to a table where drinks were being served. He poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Clara. "Here, it'll help you relax," he said with a smile. Clara took a sip, the bubbles tingling on her tongue. For a moment, she felt a sense of belonging. As they stood together, Ethan began to share stories from his childhood, speaking of adventures with his friends and family. Clara listened, feeling a connection grow between them. "I remember one Halloween, I dressed up as a superhero," he chuckled. "I thought I looked so cool, but I tripped and fell into a bush. Everyone laughed and I just wanted to disappear." Clara laughed softly, picturing a younger Ethan tangled in a bush. "That's so relatable," she said. "I once wore a costume that was too big for me and ended up losing my candy after I tripped. It was embarrassing." Their laughter helped ease Clara's tension, but the atmosphere shifted when Sarah entered the room. Dressed in a stunning gown, she captured the attention of everyone around her. Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach as Sarah's gaze landed on them. Ethan stiffened beside her, his expression darkening. "Ethan," Sarah called out, her voice dripping with surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here. And who is this?" Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Clara, taking in her worn clothing and anxious demeanor. Clara felt her cheeks flush as she sensed the judgment in Sarah's tone. "I'm Clara," she said softly, trying to maintain her composure. "Clara," Sarah repeated, a smirk forming on her lips. "How charming. Are you enjoying the wedding? I hope the food is to your liking." Her words dripped with sarcasm, the crowd around them beginning to murmur. Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. "Sarah, that's enough. Clara is my guest, and she deserves respect." Clara felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She wished the ground would swallow her whole. The eyes of the crowd felt like 1,000 needles piercing her skin. She began, but the words caught in her throat. Sarah laughed, a cold sound that echoed in the room. "Respect? Is that what you think this is about? Look at her, Ethan. She doesn't belong here." The tension in the air thickened as Clara's heart raced. She wanted to disappear, to escape the judgment and the scrutiny. Ethan's protective stance only made her feel more exposed. "I'm sorry, I need to go," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away, her feet carrying her toward the exit. Ethan watched her go, a feeling of helplessness washing over him. He wanted to reach out, to pull her back, but he remained frozen, caught between his past and the woman who had unexpectedly become so important to him. As the celebration continued around them, Clara felt her heart race when Sarah approached. The air grew heavy, and the laughter of the guests faded into a distant murmur. Sarah, with a smug expression, stood before Clara, her eyes scanning the tattered dress that Clara had chosen for the wedding. "Look at you," Sarah said sharply, her voice carrying over the music. "Did you really think you belonged here? This is a wedding, not a charity event." Clara's cheeks burned with embarrassment. Each word from Sarah felt like a jab, exposing her insecurities. She glanced at Ethan, searching for his support, but he seemed frozen, caught off guard by Sarah's sudden appearance. "Sarah, that's enough," Ethan finally spoke, stepping forward. His voice was firm, but Clara could hear the tremble beneath it. "Clara is here with me." Sarah laughed dismissively, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, please, Ethan. You think bringing her here makes her part of this world? She has no idea what it takes to fit in here." Clara felt small, as if the crowd's eyes were now all on her. The warmth of the wedding vanished, replaced by a chill of isolation. She wanted to disappear, to hide from the judgment that hung in the air like a thick fog. "Ethan, Clara began, but the words caught in her throat. "No, Clara," Ethan interrupted gently. "You have every right to be here. Don't let her words bring you down." Clara looked into Ethan's eyes, searching for reassurance. But instead of strength, she saw a flash of helplessness. Did he really believe what he was saying? Did he see her as more than just an outsider? "Maybe I should go," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The thought of leaving felt like a relief, yet it also hurt. She did not want to run away, but the sting of Sarah's words cut deep. As Clara turned to leave, Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I can't do this," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't belong here." "Clara, wait!" Ethan called out, but she was already moving through the crowd, her heart aching with every step. She could feel the weight of their gazes, the judgment that lingered like a dark cloud. Outside, the night air was cool against her flushed skin, but it did little to calm her racing heart. She wandered into a nearby park, the sounds of the wedding fading behind her. The moon hung low, casting a soft light over the path. Clara found a bench and sat down, her hands shaking as she tried to gather her thoughts. Why had she come? Why had she thought she could fit into a world that felt so foreign? "Why am I even here?" she muttered to herself. "I don't belong in a place like that." Tears brimmed in her eyes as she felt the weight of her life pressing down on her. She thought about her struggles, her past, all the moments when she felt less than enough. The confrontation with Sarah had opened old wounds, bringing all her insecurities to the surface. Meanwhile, Ethan stood still at the entrance of the park, his heart racing as he searched for Clara. He felt a desperate need to find her, to bring her back from the darkness that had enveloped her. He had seen the way Sarah's words had affected her, and the anger bubbled within him. He spotted her sitting alone on the bench, her head bowed in sadness. Taking a deep breath, he approached her slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Clara," he said softly, kneeling beside her. She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I can't do this, Ethan. I thought it would be different, but I just feel so out of place." Ethan's heart ached for her. "Clara, you are so much more than what she said. Don't let her define you. You are not your circumstances." Clara shook her head, frustration spilling over. But she was right. I don't have what it takes to be part of that world. I don't belong. Ethan took her hand, his grip warm and steady. You do belong. You belong with the people who see you for who you truly are, not for what you wear or where you come from. I see you, Clara. His words hung in the air, and Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe, just maybe, she could start to believe in herself again. The cool night air wrapped around Clara like a soft blanket as she sat on a park bench, her thoughts swirling like leaves caught in the wind. The moonlight cast a silver glow on the path, illuminating her sorrow. She felt small and fragile, still haunted by Sarah's sharp words. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Ethan. "Clara," he said softly as he stepped into the light. There you are. Clara looked up, her heart racing. What do you want, Ethan? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She wanted to sound strong, but the hurt was still fresh. I want to talk, he replied, taking a seat beside her. You don't have to feel alone in this. She turned away, staring at the ground. How can you say that? You don't know the real me. You saw what happened back there. Ethan took a deep breath. I saw someone who is brave, someone who is fighting against all odds. You are more than what Sarah said. Clara felt a flutter of hope at his words, but doubt still loomed over her. But I am nothing compared to the people at that wedding. I don't belong there. Ethan shook his head. Belonging is not about what you wear or where you come from. It's about who you are inside. You have a strength I admire. She looked at him, surprised. You admire me? Why? Because you keep going, he answered, his voice steady. Despite everything, you are still here, still fighting. That takes courage. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. I don't feel courageous. I feel lost. Ethan leaned closer, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. We all feel lost sometimes. I have my own struggles too. My past, my mistakes. They weigh on me. What do you mean? Clara asked, curiosity creeping into her voice. I mean, even though I seem successful, I often feel inadequate. I worry about being judged, just like you do, he confessed. That wedding was a reminder of my past, and I wanted to escape it. But when I met you, it felt different. You made me want to face it. Clara considered his words, her heart racing. You really think I can rise above this? That I can be more than what people think? Yes, he said firmly. You are not defined by your circumstances. You are more than your struggles. You have dreams, Clara, and you deserve to chase them. A tear rolled down Clara's cheek, but this time it was not just sadness. It was a mix of relief and hope. I wish I could believe that. Ethan wiped away her tear gently with his thumb. You have to believe it. We all have battles, but that doesn't mean we are alone. Together, we can face anything. Clara felt a connection blossoming between them, something deeper than before. I always thought I needed saving, but maybe, just maybe, I can save myself. Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with understanding. That's the spirit. You have the power within you, Clara. You just need to harness it. As they sat in the quiet of the park, Clara felt lighter. For the first time, she could see a path ahead. She was not just a woman in tattered clothing. She was a fighter, someone who could change her story. Thank you, Ethan, she said, her voice stronger now, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Always, he replied, his voice warm and sincere. We will walk this journey together. In that moment, under the silver glow of the moon, Clara realized that perhaps she was not meant to face her fears alone. And as Ethan sat beside her, she felt a spark of hope. Hope for a future that was waiting to be written, one step at a time. As the night wore on, Clara stood beneath the soft glow of the streetlights, feeling the cool breeze brush against her skin. The wedding, with all its grandeur, felt like a distant memory. She took a deep breath, her heart racing. It was time to let go of the past that had clung to her like a shadow. Ethan, she said softly, turning to him, I want to move forward. I don't want to be defined by what others think or say about me. Ethan looked at her with admiration. Clara, you are so much more than what happened tonight. You have dreams, passions, and a heart that is full of life. You don't need to let their words hold you back. Clara smiled, feeling a warmth spread within her. Ethan's words wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. She took a moment to gather her thoughts before responding. I want to chase my dreams. I want to find out who I am without the weight of judgment. Can you help me with that? Of course, Ethan replied, his voice steady. I want to be there for you. I want us to grow together. You and I are on this journey, and I know we can help each other." As they walked together through the park, Clara felt lighter. The darkness that had once clouded her mind began to lift. "You know," she said, "I've always thought that I needed to fit into a mold, to be someone I'm not. But tonight made me realize that it's okay to be myself." Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "I felt that way too. For so long, I thought I had to be perfect to be accepted. But I've learned that true connections come from being real with ourselves and each other." The two of them strolled by the trees, their branches swaying gently in the wind. Clara began to dream aloud. "What if I started painting again? I used to love it, but I stopped because I thought it wasn't practical. Maybe it's time to pick up a brush again." "That sounds amazing," Ethan exclaimed, excitement filling his voice. "You should definitely do that. Your art could inspire others, and it would be a way for you to express who you truly are." Clara's heart swelled with hope. "And what about you? What do you want, Ethan?" He paused, considering her question. "I want to build genuine relationships. I want to surround myself with people who understand me, who accept me for who I am. I want to explore life, not just live it." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Clara realized how much they had in common. They both wanted to break free from the expectations that society had placed on them. They both yearned for authenticity. "Together, we can do this," Clara said, a grin spreading across her face. "Let's promise to support each other, no matter what." "Absolutely," Ethan replied, his smile mirroring hers. "I'm all in." As they reached a small bench, Clara sat down, feeling the coolness of the metal beneath her. "I used to think that my past defined me, but now I see it as just a part of my story, not the whole book." Ethan sat next to her, leaning slightly closer. "And I think the best chapters of our lives are yet to come. We can write them together, filled with real moments and genuine connections." Under the starlit sky, Clara felt a newfound sense of freedom. She was ready to let go of the weight of judgment and embrace her journey. "I'm excited about what's next," she said, her voice filled with conviction. Ethan nodded, his eyes shining with understanding. "Me too. Let's move forward, hand in hand, supporting each other every step of the way." As they sat together, the world around them faded into the background. They were no longer bound by their pasts. Instead, they were two souls ready to explore a future full of possibilities, dreams, and the promise of a deeper connection. Together, they stepped into a new beginning, where empathy and shared experiences would guide them forward. Share this story if you believe that true connections can help us overcome our past. Leave a comment about a time when you embraced your authentic self and how it changed your life. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.